On this episode, I have with me Tullie Murrell. He is CEO and co-founder at Shaped, and we're going to talk about his journey from being a researcher to becoming a CEO and co-founder. And with that voyage, he had to come from the Australia to the States. That's a big decision in itself. He took a research role, and we'll ask him about that. And how did he actually go from being a researcher to a founder and a few other steps in between? Hopefully, we'll try to fit in as much as we can, Tullie, but I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat about all this.
Absolutely. I guess before we start, what do you guys do at Shaped?
Yeah, so Shaped is a platform for AI-driven search and recommendations. So we help like marketplaces, e-commerce businesses, and like content companies show better products and content to their users, and then ultimately drive more growth for the businesses as well.
Fantastic. All right. So I guess as mentioned, this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about your journey from being a researcher and then moving into this co-founder and CEO role. I guess I alluded to the fact that you do come from Australia and you got a bachelor's degree there. I guess just question one out of curiosity. I don't know if we talked about it, but what was the impetus of wanting to leave Australia? Was it just a better opportunity? Was it just a change of scenery? What was the reason you wanted to come over?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm originally from Adelaide in Australia, and like I kind of grew up on a farm, like maybe an hour away from Adelaide as well. So like maybe even more isolated from the world than even the average Australian. I think I always kind of knew I wanted to get out of Adelaide, I guess, like to a bigger Australian city, maybe like Sydney or Melbourne. And then it was when I was actually doing my CS degree at the University of Adelaide, I had the opportunity to do a ton of great internships. I interned at like Google in New York and then Uber in San Francisco. And I think like those internships and kind of seeing where like that was the central part of where tech is was really the main driver. Like I knew I wanted to probably leave somewhere else. And so at that point I was like, all right, tech is in the US. So like let's just try to focus on getting a job there and move over. And I guess that's what's happened.
Awesome. It's interesting as I've been talking more to founders about their journey and some of what they had to go through to get to where they are at now. And in your case, you mentioned growing up in a farm. I am curious about why CS. I guess there must be reasons why you've gone down that path, but I mean, typically I might have other options, but what was the impetus to actually wanting to get a CS degree?
Yeah, it's a good question as well. Like, I mean, I was lucky where in high school, you know how like a lot of students, they kind of don't know exactly what they should do after like what college degree, it's always kind of a lot of anxiety. I feel like even from a pretty young age, I always knew I want to do something with computers. And it was always just a passion of mine. I think even just from when I was like pretty young, even like, I'm thinking when I was like 7 or 8 years old, we had a computer and I would just spend so much time on it. And so I was always kind of involved. And I was always kind of curious and like jumping into how things worked, I would say. And like in high school, then kind of learned how to code myself and did like an IT course that I loved. And so, I was actually lucky in that it was a pretty easy choice for me. I do wonder if like part of it was being isolated on the farm a bit and then like having a lot of time or to myself to kind of to engage that curiosity. But I feel like I'm lucky that I was so focused early on.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the reason I asked was because when you mentioned you grew up on a farm, obviously a slightly different environment than maybe other founders I speak to, right? You have a little bit of a different background, different journey. But it's interesting. Obviously, you mentioned the isolation, the affinity, early age to computers, study CS. You took some internships. I guess as you had some internships at really good companies as well. I guess when you came time to want to find a job and start your career, what were you? You have a CS degree. You've had some good internships. What were you looking for? Were you looking for something specific? Was it just, hey, I need my first job? What was it?
Yeah, so I think I set myself up towards the end of university in the fact that I had these internships. So it was like at Palantir, Google, and Uber. And that kind of put me in a position where I feel like I could get a lot of jobs, really. And it wasn't as competitive as it was now. And like I think now everyone kind of knows they have to just like study for the interview process. And there's like this kind of, you have to do the leak code, kind of questions if you're familiar and all of these things. I think back then people were still trying to work out like what the game was that you needed to kind of play to be able to get these jobs. And I feel like I kind of had worked it out and was like studying a lot of leak code. That's what kind of got me the internships. That being said, after I finished the degree or kind of towards the end of it, I was considering starting a company then. We had done some hackathons with some friends from uni and actually my co-founder, where we actually got like investment offers at the end. So we were thinking of actually taking those, as well as I also was really passionate about computer vision, with like kind of the AI subfield of like computers understanding, images or video. And so I had some idea. I really wanted to start a company in that space. But I think because I was in Adelaide, because I felt like I didn't have really any proper work experience, I felt like the right choice was I should go to the US, get that full-time job, try to like focus and like hone my skills a bit more. And then if I was going to start a company, do that, later on. Ultimately I think that was the right choice. I think it's really hard to start it would have been really hard starting one of these companies in Adelaide without any kind of business experience, I think.
I could imagine that. I guess as you were doing the hackathons, you mentioned a couple of investment opportunities. Did you go into the hackathon thinking, if we do well, maybe we have that opportunity, or was that just a byproduct of just producing good work?
I think it was a byproduct. Like I don't think that was ever really the goal. Like we did the hackathons pretty often, and I loved doing them. I had a team that all loved it, and so I think we were actually we got offered. It was $50K check basically to do to just like start and do the hackathon project we were doing, and it was like in the mining tech area because like mining's huge in Australia, so it was like applying computer vision into like drill analysis and understanding where you should actually drill for more resources. But yeah, I'm kind of happy we didn't take it, and it wasn't really the goal.
Absolutely. I guess, if we fast forward a little bit, you do take a job with Meta. Obviously, good company. You mentioned you had interest in computer vision. Was that one of the drivers of hopefully finding that type of career with Meta?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was choosing roles, I was kind of choosing between Google, Meta, a couple of companies. And one of the big reasons I actually chose Meta is that I think they don't pigeonhole you as much in terms of the team you're going into. Like when you apply for Google, and if you get an offer there, at least how it worked, this is 10 years ago now, like they will assign you a specific team, and it's not that flexible to choose what team you get. So it's like whatever team you get, that's kind of your career or the thing you're kind of specializing in. Whereas at least with Meta, they don't give you a team when you have the offer. So a lot of it is like you join, work out the team you like, and then you can kind of join it. And I felt like that was good for me because I didn't have much experience on paper, but I felt like I was pretty good with computer vision and the math side of things, which not everyone has maybe. And so I kind of wanted to take the Meta one. Not only, I thought Meta was also a great company, but also because I like a lot more flexibility of the team I could choose. And then when I joined, I looked at just like every computer vision team there was at Meta and ended up landing on their first like augmented reality team. And it was like a new team within the like applied machine learning org, which was the first kind of horizontal machine learning AI org they had at Meta. And so as part of that, I was able to work kind of on the forefront of computer vision at Meta on AI, AR across all these products. And like a big contribution I made on that was like I worked a lot on the Instagram stories, like AR effects. How they do the face filters. They had like a world effects thing where you could place things in the scene. And so, spent a ton of time on that and like kind of earning my stripes at the early days of Meta and focusing kind of on exactly what I was wanting to learn about and work on really.
Yeah, I guess if somebody's probably listening and they're like, okay, well, he had a bachelor's degree, CS, seems like he's good at math. He's doing a lot of computer vision stuff. I would tend to assume a lot of those roles, maybe now, obviously we're talking a few years ago, but now are more PhD oriented, minimum master's degree. I think a bachelor's degree would be really a bigger challenge than maybe it was. But I guess in your circumstance, you did get into, a very early stage process for Meta within this team with a bachelor's degree. I guess your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is related. I did like, I think that's why I wanted to mention the Google thing is like, I think getting into these things, it starts with kind of giving you like putting the odds in your favor and choosing routes that have like a lot of open-endedness rather than like constraining it. And so like that's the example of like, you can choose a role where you've got a dedicated team and then you kind of are like, I feel like putting yourself in more of a narrow direction, or you can choose a role where it's like maybe there's more flexibility of changing roles and things like that. And then you can kind of get in one way and then kind of finagle your way into another area. And I think that's what Meta actually gives you a lot of opportunity to do. And like also with Meta, a lot of Meta is about kind of networking around the company. And if you know people and like, and people do believe in you, you can, I think, get into areas that maybe you don't have the background for. And there's other companies, I mean, Meta's my experience, there's a lot of companies like that. And I think that's like probably the learning that I'd have for other people is like kind of choose these open-ended positions rather than necessarily a narrow one, and then like earn your stripes there and then kind of evolve from there. And you can kind of have a higher ceiling.
You mentioned obviously you enjoyed computer vision. You have you had interest in it. It sounds there's a lot of intentionality. Even going into Facebook, you wanted, or Meta in this case, you wanted to make sure you had the ability to choose a team. Obviously, you chose the team you like versus if you go to Google, you don't have that choice. Is intentionality at play here? Because it sounds like you know what you wanted and you were kind of positioning yourself through the process to kind of head into that direction.
I mean, yeah, I will say it's like retroactively, it seems so linear and like clear. At the time, I didn't totally know. I think it was more of a like, I knew this gave me more options to choose from and I could kind of decide. And I did know I was into AI, like computer vision, and want to do that. And I was really nervous that I'd just be matched with like an internal tools team or something like that at Google or some of the other roles. And then that could kind of pigeonhole me a bit. So there was some, it probably sounds a bit more intentional than maybe it was in the time.
I guess what's funny is I interviewed a founder this morning, and the conversation was about hindsight and how the dots look really connected. And as you're mentioning that, I'm like, that's a very fair statement, because when we do look back, we can revise history of those decisions and go, oh, you know what, but in this case, obviously it's interesting. You were flexibility and choice was important to you, and I mean, you made the right decisions. You're at Meta for a few years. Obviously, you're working on cool stuff. You mentioned some of the Instagram features. Some people could stay there for a long time. I mean, people do stay for a long time. Is there a point at which, you decide, hey, well, I guess two questions. Question one is, when did actually you come up with the idea for Shaped? And, and what was the gap you saw? Maybe that's really the question here.
Yeah. So let me just go back a bit on the Meta experience, because it actually helped me explain it. Like one thing is, I started on because I started in this like applied machine learning org, it was still very much on the applied side. And I was in that organization and kind of like on more the applied product side for a few years. And it was kind of like that experience of being not fully on research and kind of getting a bit more seniority and like on that side that actually let me jump onto the research side of Meta. And so that's like an even more unusual jump, I think, for bachelor students, is actually going to like Facebook AI research. So that was like the org run by like Jan LeCun. I guess he's still kind of running it. Focusing on like fundamental research and papers. And so that was the reason I was able to make that jump is really just like networking a lot, because I just was only working on applied computer vision. And then I was able to kind of jump to a research computer vision team. So after that though, as part of being at Facebook AI research, I was able to work a lot on video understanding research, as well as like the training pipelines that were used at FAIR. And then a big thing that the video understanding research kind of went into is that video understanding was really important for the production ranking and recommendation models. So like Instagram Reels is obviously all computer vision, computer vision based. How do you like not all, but like there's a good portion of it understand the short form video, ads ranking. Like a lot of advertisements are now like short form video and things. So video is really important. And so I was able to work a lot on video understanding, research, and applying that to the ranking models and recommendation and search models that are used across all of Meta's products. And I think like seeing that and being involved in the ranking was where I kind of realized, I guess, two things. Like one is how important ranking recommendations is for the end consumer and the product. Like we would run a experiment and see like a 400% increase of engagement when personalization was turned on versus doing like a chronological Instagram feed, just as an example. And so it was like a dramatic consumer difference of engagement clearly from this. And also I think this is when TikTok was coming out, or like I started using maybe in 2020. You kind of see firsthand how good that experience can actually be. Like almost like really addictive actually. So for better or worse. And then on the flip side, you also see on the commercial side for Meta, I think they claim like half of their revenue is attributed to personalization in one way or another, like which is hugely dramatic for the company. It's like a massive driver of revenue, and that's just Meta. Like if you think about how much personalization technology drives revenue across the world and the internet, like it's significant. Like it's a huge driver, I think, of like big tech like revenue, really. So, okay, it's good for the consumer, it's good for the business. Why then, like all the companies that aren't like Meta level, why don't they have the same kind of personal, hyper personalized experience that you would see at like TikTok, Meta, Amazon? And the reason is it's still really hard to build these systems. Like, I mean, Meta has thousands of AI, machine learning scientists. They've built this system for decades, at least a decade, and they're still kind of improving it. So, like, a big reason that the mid-market kind of style company, like an e-commerce retailer or a marketplace, doesn't have that is like the time it takes to build it, the talent that you need to actually build it, and then the cost of that team. And so that's really, I think, where some of the ideas or initial inspiration of Shaped was like, how do you help businesses that don't have these 1,000 machine learning engineers have those same kind of hyper personalized experiences that you would see at like a TikTok or a Meta? And yeah, I guess that's kind of the long-winded answer to the question. We're going a bit back to my history at Meta.
No, I like that. At one point in my career, I did do some work at enterprise search and personalization, and I love the space. So hearing you bring that to a level where others can take advantage of it, use it, I think that's a great mission. We'll come back to that because I have some curiosities myself about what you guys are doing. But I guess when you obviously see a gap, it's very clear there's an opportunity. I mean, massive opportunity. When you decide to actually, leave Facebook, become a founder, I guess we've talked about it. You had some great internships. You had a great experience, 5+ years at Meta. You learned a lot. You see a lot. Leaving that and putting that founder CEO hat on is going to be quite different, because obviously the ecosystem of support itself will be vastly different. It's you and whoever else your founding team is. When you decide to take that next step, I guess, talk to us a little bit about the mindset. Like, what was there some fears? Was there some doubts? Was there some, hey, I've not done this and I'm going to have to fly by the seat of my pants a little bit? I guess, what was that experience like for you when you decide to go ahead and start Shape?
Yeah. So, it was a tough decision, and I kind of didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I do now, so I can share some insights there. But like, first off, like, so after Meta, I actually did leave to join a startup and to help with their, like, actually be the first, like, lead ML there and like build their ML kind of org and platform. And I will say also in terms of the inspiration, like, if a lot of my initial thesis of like the importance of personalization came from Meta, where I kind of got more conviction to make the jump was after working at this startup, I kind of saw how hard it was to build an ML platform from the ground up. And I guess how much startups or businesses that aren't a Meta or a Google need to kind of catch up to be able to do this. And so I actually left that company after 3 to 4 months, kind of because I thought, all right, if I'm kind of building this here and I know this struggles, like why not build this, like more democratize it and build it for a whole lot of different startups and mid-market companies. And so it's a pretty important decision. It was a pretty important like part of the story for why I made the jump, because I think it would have been hard for me to go from Meta to startup, because it was like, all right, even just kind of golden handcuffs, you're getting paid a ton. Like there's kind of, all right, even from a lifestyle standpoint, am I ready to do that? I don't know if I would have necessarily done that jump, but because I went to the startup, it was almost like a stepping stone. All right, I'm going to get paid a bit less, and more of my comp is in this like non-liquid equity. So I've already kind of made that choice, but I still feel kind of comfortable because I'm at least making some money. And then it's like, all right, if I'm doing that, then I think a lot of my mental model was like, all right, if I'm already working at a startup and I'm already kind of doing this for them, maybe it's not as big of a jump to go and do this for myself, potentially. And so, yeah, the stepping stone is really important for that decision. And I think the other thing is like, this does happen if you've been at big tech for over 5 years. It does become a bit of the same, and you kind of realize becomes more of a game of like your performance review every quarter, and you become so like obsessed with that, and you feel like you lose a lot of faith in why you're actually doing these from things than originally, like to help customers and things like that. And so I think I was getting a bit of that, and I think a lot of people feel that. So those kind of things all built up to make me decide I wanted to do something else and like take the jump, and then the stepping stone is what got me there finally.
Very, very cool. I like that. I heard somebody recently tell me that making uncomfortable decisions is part of the job of being a co-founder, being a CEO, leader of a startup. I guess as you were kind of talking about that, I was kind of thinking about that aspect of it, where to leave Meta, there is going to be some discomfort. I mean, it's the job you'd had the longest. I mean, it was your career up to that point. Go to a startup and realize, okay, I can do this for myself. I guess to make that transition and to actually then go out and run the business as it's been, I guess talk to us a little bit about that experience. I mean, you guys have been in business for 4+ years, so you've been running it now. You had the engineering side down, so I had no doubt that was probably easy to do. What about all the other things? Because there's so many other hats to wear, especially as the CEO. Like if you were the co-founder, CTO, maybe there's a little bit more comfort because you have the technology to pillar to. But what about the CEO, co-founder? What did you have to pick up along the way?
Yeah, so this is the thing is like, and particularly when you like leave, you don't kind of know you don't know what you don't know as well. I think the biggest realization that a lot of product or engineering founders make in the first like 3 months is that go to market is more important than product and engineering. And I would say, at least for B2B SaaS, it's probably go to market is in the 60 or 70% of the reason for success. And like 30% is probably more on the product engineering side. But I think like a lot of product founders, when they first get into it, they probably think it's the opposite, 70% product, 30% go to market. So I think it's the first like big realization. And then, okay, you make that realization, and then you now need to think, you got to realize like, okay, and I really don't have the go-to-market experience. So that's what I really need to learn. And so your job quickly goes from, for me, like, I mean, every day I was reading papers about AI. And then after becoming a founder, it's like every day I'm just reading go-to-market books and like blog posts, VC stuff. For us, we were really lucky because we got into YC within a few months of starting the company. And I kind of think of YC as a bit like go-to-market boot camp for product founders. Like that is really the thing you're learning while like working intensely on the product at the same time. And so, yeah, I think that's like a big realization of what changes, not just for researchers, but I mean, researchers as well, but also just product and engineering founders. Like you just need to be like studying go-to-market nonstop. I think even if you're a CTO, you probably should do that as well. Because it's really like, if you know both sides of things, I think it really does help. I think after that, after the kind of that's from a like learning and knowledge side of thing. I think the other side of thing is like just the lifestyle as well. I mean, we would like at Meta, we would work a lot, to be honest, to particularly relate it. Like I'm fair, like when it's a paper deadline, like it's pretty kind of cutthroat. You're spending all your time on this like nonstop. But I think when it's something that you own and you're doing in a startup, it just comes another level. It's like every kind of waking hour basically gets spent on it. Uh, and that's definitely some adjusting, and that really doesn't go away for the first 2 years, I think, of founding the company. And so like that's the other, there's the knowledge and then the lifestyle shift, I would say, the biggest two changes.
That's fantastic. I was just noting actually because you mentioned the thing that founders don't realize, most founders don't realize, is how important that go to market is. And it does make sense because what you're probably, and a lot of founders that are technical, like obviously if you come from a operator role, as maybe in sales, maybe that's different. But especially if you're coming from a technical background, the product and building it's probably something conceptually you're just more comfortable if it's been a part of your career. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
You alluded to that. I guess in the 4 years that you have been in the role, if you were to look back, in terms of the technical capabilities and skills you came in from Meta versus now, like, do you try to keep yourself still close to the code? Do you realize that that's just a losing battle, or what's your day to day look like when it comes to the technology?
Yeah. So where are we sitting now? And like for everyone else, like I guess we did our Series A last year. We have like 50 plus kind of customers, and there's about 20 people on our team. And we're at a point where we're getting like a lot more like enterprise customers, and like things are going quite well for us right now. But like now, I would say a lot of my role as CEO is more like parachuting in to like the different function as a like based on what is having the biggest challenges. So like the last 2 months, I was focused actually fully on engineering and product because we're having a lot of reliability issues and scale issues because we have like much bigger customers coming in. And then like now this next 2 months, I'm going to be in go to market, it sounds like, because we're trying to work out, should we be optimizing more for inbound or outbound, and like how does that ratio work? And we're having some like, it kind of keeps on flipping and flopping of what's actually working best for us. So there's always kind of like a big challenge of the company. And I feel like luckily because I have the product engineering stuff, I feel like I have, some competence there. And then I feel like the first multiple years of the company was so go to market focused. I'm kind of in a point now where I can generalize across both. And then I guess given the title and responsibility, I can move the needle like by just jumping in areas, working a month there, working a month there. But I try not to, I think if I stay too long in one area, that's almost like a pitfall or a failure case, because it almost, at that point, I'm not really using my value across the company, and it's almost too tightly focused. I don't know though. It's like I think different CEOs have different like ways they do the role, but that's what I found is working for me right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it is, to be able to jump in and address different problems. It is interesting. I did want to, before I let you go, because I do have, selfishly, I know people are like, oh, ask him more questions about his career. Selfishly, I am very interested in Shape because, I do think the personalization that you were mentioning, what we're seeing with large language models, how things can potentially just become more and more personalized at a certain level. I guess, coming from Meta, you used the example of, TikTok. If you're kind of looking at what you've seen in the growth, and obviously the improvements as well in the construct of being able to personalize deeper, I guess, where's the limitations kind of sit for personalization, especially for, let's say, customers that don't just have as much data? Is data still one of the leading factors of where personalization limitations are? Is it still the tech? I guess, where does that sit from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think we're at a really interesting time, like this year particularly, where I think after there was all these big breakthroughs of LLMs on the language side, and maybe that happened that was I guess 22 October was around ChatGPT, I think, and I think now all of the other areas of production machine learning, like say computer vision might have caught up the year after, and then you kind of have the other areas of machine learning kind of catching up almost now, and that's like a lot of production ML, recommendations, search, content, like kind of integrity, fraud detection. All these use cases, I feel like they're like catching up to the breakthroughs that happened in language in 22. And so it's really exciting because like a lot of people have found in this last year that transformers that power these LLMs, if you scale them up and train them on behavioral data, so where every input of the transformer model is a interaction rather than like a word token, you get the same kind of scaling law improvements as you see on language. And so like one example is like Stripe just did this where they trained on all of their payments data and they saw like a 30% to 35% increase of fraud detection based on like a series of previous transactions. What is the likelihood that it's actually fraud? And so I think it's great because you're just seeing all of these case studies in the last like three to 4 months of, all right, we can actually apply these now to production ML and see these huge improvements. And that's true for recommendations. Netflix had the same kind of result a few months ago. And so to answer your question, like I think over the last 10 years, there hasn't been a huge breakthrough on recommendations or search. And it basically has been data is potentially the bottleneck. But I think as of the last year, and this is even since starting Shaped, these breakthroughs have kind of started to happen, where it's much easier to work on like less data. You can get just like better results in general, even if you have data. And I think it might even be the turning point of where like every business can now get TikTok level personalization, and it's just from the catching up with the technology. So that's kind of been an interesting thing. And I can I don't know how technical the audience is, but I can link to some papers and some resources on like where this is going because it's something I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, I think the audience definitely there's definitely technical people in there as well. And maybe final question. I know you gotta get back to it. When you think about personalization, and you outlined some of the issues that we do see, breakthroughs are coming. Is there a tipping point of speed and personalization? And the reason I ask is it seems that if personalizations happen faster and faster, and we get closer to, I don't know if real time, but very near real time personalization, we can start shaping a lot of narratives around almost anything. I mean, let alone something we're watching, but the outcomes of something we're watching, and midstream adjusting personalization because we realize maybe we got it wrong. I mean, is there a notion that speed and personalization there's a I guess intersecting point where near real time becomes a game changer?
Yeah, I think if I'm understanding correctly, like what you're talking about also is related to the generative generation of new content as well, and like fusing personalization with generation of new content. Because then there's this kind of ideal world where it's like, all right, we can generate content now, but it's like, what is the goal of that generation of content and who is it best for? And like, there's infinite possibilities that you could generate. And I think the way you solve that is the goal is probably related to personalization. Like you want something that for every person, it's an enriching experience for that person. And like, if you can kind of do real-time generation with real-time personalization, then you can kind of mix them together and get this like ideal world of like much more relevant experiences for everyone. I think there's always experiences for like, there's room for non-personalized experience, by the way, which is a separate thing. But like, I do think there's what you're talking about will exist in the future. And I don't think we're that far from it. Like even now we work with some customers where they are like a generative media like platform for different, like a whole lot of different use cases actually we have for that. And then we just do the personalization on top of it. So we kind of already doing some of this and we are doing it in real time. So it's getting close to ready to like ready now. I think the other example that I see is kind of related to this is you see it in the e-commerce space, trying to generate the thumbnail for the specific person as they're like browsing. Like that's kind of a common one that I think will come in the next 2 years, say.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. I'm really interested because I joke with, I joke at times. I go, I'm old enough where I remember, the Choose Your Own Adventure books, and I'm like, I can only imagine that that's gonna be almost real time for a lot of stuff we do from a personalization standpoint. Because if you know what I want, and you can start tapping into that, you can start anticipating from slight differences in how I react. I mean, the future could be limitless.
I agree. Like our initial vision was kind of related to just like personalizing every digital service. So whatever like software service you're using today, how do we make it more relevant to the end user? But I think and that starts at like the surface level. You're just choosing between a set of candidates. But I think now it's kind of going lower level, like how do you actually choose the content itself? And I think there's even like, I mean, kind of taking this concept to the extreme, it's like, how do you even use this in the product development process? Do you know what I mean? Where it's like you're actually going even deeper than content, but actually how is this physical thing being created? And so, I mean, I think that's kind of the future. I don't know where the limit is and how long it'll take, but like that's the way we're going.
Ah, yes, that's a whole different episode for another day because I feel like you just spoke my language of what I've been thinking about. But Tullie, I really appreciate you coming on. If somebody does have a question, I know we talked a lot about your journey, especially being involved in research and the dynamics there, then starting a company and being a co-founder CEO. If somebody does have a question, they want to ask a follow-up, what's a good way of doing that?
Yeah, I think the best way to get in contact with me is LinkedIn, and message me there. I also can share, that or like X basically, which I'll respond. And so I can link you it's just actually just at Tullie for X, and then it's just like Tullie is my LinkedIn name as well. I'm lucky to have a unique enough name that most of my profiles are just Tullie.
I love it. Awesome, man. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. All right. That's it for this episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think we covered a lot of ground with Tullie. We talked about, moving from Australia, the reasons behind that, to America, took the internships and decided to go down the role with Meta, ended up in research. I mean, we talked about how he made that transition happen and what he did after to start his company, and also talked a little bit about what Shape does and a little bit about personalization. Probably not enough to my own liking, but maybe another episode down the road with him. So please share this episode with somebody who might really benefit from it. Also like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.